Welcome to Minamata City. This small urban city is located in the southwestern part of Kumamoto Prefecture, Japan, facing the Shiranui Sea. Just to show you what it's really like here in Minamata Bay, we are on the west coast of Kyushu Island, and the local area is a small farming and fishing area with clusters of homes in between the small coves and harbors, with the homes protected by seawalls. Surrounded by mountains, Kyushu Island, and the ocean, one could call Minamata a slice of paradise. This small city was once a hidden gem, known for its culture and beauty. That is, until the cats began to dance.
Good evening, Lexington. It's Kelly, live from Minamata, and we're here to hear from Dr. Fujikawa about Minamata disease and how it's affected a small town in Japan.
The town of Minamata has been affected because of the chemical plant, the Chisa Corporation, which was built in the 1930s and produced a chemical called acetaldehyde, which requires a catalyst. The corporation chose mercury, which is a heavy metal.
Why did the factory pour the byproducts in the water to begin with?
The corporation thought that it was too expensive to properly dispose of the byproducts, so they chose to dump them in the bay instead. However, one of the byproducts was inorganic mercury, which is much more harmful to human and environmental health than the organic form. This began in 1932.
What happens when the byproducts are poured into the water?
Anaerobic bacteria are able to transform the organic mercury into the most poisonous form of the metal, methyl mercury. Then, through bioaccumulation from the plants to the fish, and eventually to cats and humans, the mercury is transferred.
Why did the fishermen allow the byproducts to be poured into the bay?
The factory was able to dump the poisonous byproducts into the bay, even though this was the main source of food for many of the residents, because they would pay the poor fishermen stipends for damaging their fishing areas.
Thank you for your explanation for how the chemicals affect the bay.
This disease does not discriminate between age or gender, but this disease has mainly affected people who wait from the Shiranui Sea, which is mostly fishermen and their families. The disease has also been reported to affect fish and cats. The first report of this disease is from a 5-year-old girl who suffered from severe symptoms of brain damage. She wasn't able to walk, and her speech was incoherent. Then, just days later, her younger 2 older sister was admitted to the hospital, suffering the same symptoms. Then, the neighbor's children were admitted for the same strange symptoms, and quickly there were epidemic levels of this strange disease. Unfortunately, representatives of Chisa have denied that their byproducts that are dumped into the bay are the cause of disease between fish, cats, and humans. Under scrutiny, the factory changed its dumping routes to the other side of the bay. They started pouring the byproducts into the Minamata River Delta on the other side of town to Niigata, causing a second outbreak. Once the people in the area started eating the fish, they started developing the same strange symptoms of tingling and numbness of their limb and lips. Along with this, their motor skills, speech, and vision has become impaired, and, in extreme cases, uncontrollable movements and shouting. This disease is debilitating, and many families have succumbed to the weight of it.
We're live with someone who's been personally affected by Minamata. Do you care to share your story with us?
Yeah, so it was my father, and he was a very highly esteemed fisherman in the area. He was very proud of his work, but one day we started to notice that he was complaining of tingling and numbness in his limbs, and no one really thought anything of it until one day we were out on his fishing boat, standing and pulling in the nets, when a boat passed us by that caused waves and knocked my father off balance and then into the water. It was then that we noticed that he needed to be cared for. Unfortunately, my mother was too little to take care of my father the way he needed to be taken care of, and so we put him in the hospital. And while he was in the hospital, he progressively got worse. He couldn't sleep, so they gave him sleeping shots. He couldn't eat, so he was given a feeding tube. And then at one point, he just started clawing at the walls until he had no skin left around his fingers and eventually no nails at all. He passed away a few weeks ago, and we've started to notice some similar symptoms in my mother.
So sorry. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm here with Miss Tanaka, who's going to share her story about Minamata and her family.
Four of my 6 children were in elementary school, and our backyard was the bay. The children loved to play in the water and just see the tide and everything that had been left behind. My children were absolutely full of life and enjoyed every part of it, but we struggled once one of my children became sick. We struggled for years. I spent 7 years in the hospital with one of my children. My husband took extra shifts at work, everything that was available to get extra money, and we had to leave our 12-year-old daughter in charge of the other children at home. This disease has ruined my family's life, and Chisa Corporation has not taken responsibility whatsoever. All I can pray is that the rest of my children do not get sick.
All right, thank you for sharing this tonight, Beth.
Although the disease has ruined many lives, there is still some hope. Meet Fuji Sakamoto, who has supervised the care of her daughter.
Our daughter showed symptoms of the disease, but it never crossed our mind that she had Minamata disease. The doctors never diagnosed her with anything, and we were left in the dark to take care of her, so we did what we felt was right day by day. We were urged by friends to apply to have her verified for the disease after years of taking care of her. Once she was finally verified as having Minamata disease, she started to receive massive injections of vitamins and therapy for her ravaged nerve fibers. Now she can finally speak, even though it is slow and she struggles. But she is starting to sound happier.
Stories such as Fuji's are not rare, and there is still hope that many can receive treatment or even settlements for what they have had to endure. The reports of outrage and protests offer hope and more hardship for a bleak situation. Take Tsuruo Kuwamoto. He and his friends pitched a tent in front of the Chiso headquarters in Tokyo to protest the company's poor negotiation settlements. The group of friends grew and grew, and forced Chiso to reevaluate the compensation provided. He is fighting for his father, who died of Minamata disease. On his own time, he talked to other people affected by the disease and has been protesting the office building daily with his supporters. They physically fought some of the guards that were helping keep order outside the office building. The situation looked dire, but Tsuruo had hope that justice would be served. In 1970, the Water Pollution Control Law was enacted, which enforced control of the discharge of mercury and cadmium-contaminated water, and the government started a project to dredge the sediment from the bottom of the river to help clean up the water. Ultimately, by 1975, Chiso was forced to compensate each severe case of Minamata disease $68,000, and less severe cases $60,000, totaling over $80 million.